There is a interesting half a phrase in the Isha Upanishad. He who knows it not. And he who has not the thought of it, knows it. Mother made it easier to understand it when she was asked, what is truth? We see when we go to Sri Aurobindo's room, it is written, cling to truth. So she was asked, what is truth? And he said, you cannot define it. Same thing from the Isha Upanishad, you cannot define it. Each one understands it in his own way. So how can we know it? She said, if you are sincere, you will know it in your heart. And then she used a very interesting word. She says that the only word that comes closest to revealing what truth is dharma. You will know it in the heart. You cannot, there is no way you can define it. But we are living in a mental age, though we are moving now more and more towards the intuitive age, where we needed to define things very, very clearly. And when we go to the roots of these words and when we look at what they mean today, it's very surprising. Our mind has been captured with certain connotations which are associated with words. And if you look at Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, one of the marvelous things, there are many marvelous things, but one of the things which I have been amazed, how Sri Aurobindo uses words, a most commonplace word. And he gives it a meaning which is far beyond its scope. It's literally in word, he is practicing going beyond the word. As the scripture says, Shabd Brahmati Vartate. For example, one of the lines, one of my favorites, the word loiter is generally used in a very negative sense. He is loitering around, aimlessly wandering around. Sri Aurobindo in Savitri uses the word in this way: in nature's instruments loiters secret God. Now what do you say? Is he doing a right thing? Is he doing a good thing? So many of these words, when we go back to their origin, especially in a certain context, in Sanskrit it was different, and I suppose it must be the same in Tamil, where words have a lot more flexible meaning. They merge into each other, blend into each other. They sometimes fuse with each other. They evolve from one to the other. But that's not the context in which we use today, and some of the terms we are taking today are these, for instance, religion, sect, cult. Sect and cult today carry a very negative meaning. Oh, he belongs to a sect. He's in a cult. People have sometimes asked me, is it a cult? Mother and Sri Aurobindo's yoga. So I tell them what is there in Mother's prayers and meditation. Yes, it's a cult beyond limits. I cherish for you a cult which is beyond limits. So that's the only way to make the human mind spin and understand, or at least through the shock, open a door. Yes, it's a cult beyond limit. What really is a cult? Cult is typically described as centered around a personality, around certain teachings, and we have belief in it. So it's a cult. In that sense, yes, Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And see, the problem of this definition is, we say it's a cult, so it's something negative. So there is a tendency to get rid of the personality, get rid of, So what you have at the end of it is neither yoga nor spirituality, but a mental belief and idea about things. But in India, this problem was never there, because it was always understood that yoga was transmitted from a guru to a disciple. And the guru was the door towards the truth that one was seeking. So when it is said in the Bible, I am the door and I am the way, it is understood. For an Indian mind, it's understood. Yes, of course. The center of that personality who stands at the gate. And Sri Aurobindo gives a great importance to this in Essays on the Gita. He says there are three elements of any yoga: the Bhakt, the Bhagavat, and the Bhagwan. So whenever a divine representative comes upon earth, Christ, Krishna, Buddha, Sri Aurobindo, so he stands at the center as the gate. So, this is one way we can look at it and understand it very simply, very directly, and understand that yes, the divine in a human form, I'm speaking just of the cult part, divine in a human form becomes the gateway to that which he represents. So, at one level, he represents the divine consciousness to the human mind and human consciousness, which is so limited. Imagine conceiving of divine as something which you can neither define nor describe. That's how ultimately the greatest mystery is. So the other day in Jaipur we were talking about Ken Upanishad. So Ken Upanishad speaks of that which is beyond. At the end he says, what is he? He is delight. And then it says, those who dwell upon him, they become like carriers of sweetness, and people swarm around them because they contain that delight. And what is delight? Again, this word, when we use it in our everyday life, we don't understand, because delight is neither happiness nor joy nor felicity. It is something far deeper than what the human mind can ever conceive. Another word which has suffered such a degradation is love. We all know that today, if one uses the word love, it carries a very, very banal connotation. It doesn't carry any of those profundities. The mother uses this specifically. She says the word love has really been degraded in the human consciousness. It carries none of the meanings which is originally meant to carry. So, same way, the word cult, yes, the Bhagwan, the divine as the human representative, is the path. There is nothing wrong in it. It's the ego which doesn't want to surrender, which wants to maintain its individuality and says, no, I'll do it all my way. Divine has no issue about it. Free to go your way. But very often this way, because, and often I give this example that you want to practice yoga without a guru, without somebody to guide you. Okay, fine, you learn mathematics all by yourself. Maybe somebody can do it. Michael Faraday was actually sitting in a shop, his father's shop, and he learned about electromagnetism there. But then he couldn't understand what he is experiencing. So he goes and gets admitted to a PhD school where a teacher teaches him this very simple thing. This idea that even a simple thing like kindergarten stuff, we need somebody to, not teacher in the sense a classroom teaching, but somebody to help us who has gone through that process. So to imagine that one can undertake the journey of yoga, where at each step there is a danger and a charm, and very often the two are together, and through them there is a possibility. You can neither take this route nor that route. You have to go through it, and then the possibility emerges. It's an opportunity. So, to imagine that one can undertake this journey without somebody at the center of it is either foolhardiness or an arrogance of the intellect. There is not only about guidance. Very often people believe, okay, the guru is just to guide you. That is the minimum that a guru does. Minimum. The greatest gurus don't guide, they do it. They carry you. That's what today, I think, in Park Guest House, that wonderful thing, that the divine, even when there is a fall, the divine has let you fall so that you can rise higher and greater. So when we understand it, now who else can say such things except the master? Imagine if these words are not there. And one says, okay, I'll follow it my way. The first time the bones break, one is... So he not only guides. Guidance is a very... people often think he will give some updesh and rest is your way. He carries us through the journey in the arms of love. He takes us. It's a tremendous grace. Helps us during difficult hours. So divine as a human is not just a representative so that our mind can fix upon the idea of the eternal. Of course, that is the minimum, because it's difficult to conceive of the eternal, of the infinite, the absolute. So we start by somebody who has realized, though the form is there, which is like any other human form, but well, deep inside the consciousness is completely different, and through the form we can come into contact with that consciousness. That's why in India this problem never arose between religion and spirituality, because it was always understood that the two are deeply interconnected. Take, for instance, if you go to Kedarnath, so what do you find at the top of Kedarnath? Do you find a lovely image of Shiva in a Nataraj pose or anything like that? You find a stone. What is that stone? That stone is precisely representing Shiva there. He is nothing but everything. Even in the stone, he is there. One can look at it like that. So, this idea that divine is either this or that was never there. One could pick up a stone, worship a river, take a sun, and it could become a doorway to approach the infinite. It could be a flower. As I said, in the Indian context, as a child, we used to worship a stone called Shaligram, which was regarded as a representative of Lord Vishnu. Just because it had those three nice dharis around, and we took it like it's a Janeu. And I don't know whether Vishnu Bhagwan wears a Janeu or not, but it was a very nice feeling that yes, this is Lord Vishnu. Now, it's the principle behind this is that there is the divine immanent in this entire creation. This is something which very often is completely missing in both the Western context, all the Semitic religion. This idea of the divine being immanent in creation, and it's so relevant, so important. Sri Aurobindo speaks about it. And the mother says that I had to struggle again, because this idea that divine is somewhere up above was something which I was taught. And even Sri Aurobindo, she says, had to struggle against this idea that he is somewhere up above. But this thought that he is immanent within us. If you read those verses from the Ishopanishad where Sri Aurobindo puts it like that he is nearer to you. He is in the drift of the galaxies. He is in the heart of the atom. He is in the plant, the stone, the river, the sun, the moon and stars. But he is still nearer. He is in the old man who is bent and moving forward, in the laughter of a boy, in the blush of a girl. And he is still nearer. He is in you. So we concentrate on the divine within. But how do we concentrate on something which we just don't know? We need an image. The mind has to build an image. Some people concentrate on the sun, some people on a flower. And if this is just a gateway to pass into the beyond, it is enough. But here, as Sri Aurobindo says, there is a work to do. So in this yoga, there is something still more. This contact with the divine as the representative, human representative of the divine, is not just so that we take that image and we use that image or any other image for that matter to realize the divine within, the self within, which can be done actually by concentrating, but also because this yoga, there is a return back to the nature. So divine is not just pointing us the way. The Guru here is not just pointing us the way and the rest we have to do. He is there to help us, carry us through the journey. So it's a living presence. And that living presence is not just an abstraction which, one concentrates upon the light and takes it as a divine presence. One concentrates on any other form and figure. This presence, this form which has been taken by the divine, is meant to open the door towards the supramental future. So that's where we understand the full sense of Christ saying that I am the door and I am the path. So this I is not any other for, realizing the Christhood. He becomes the door and the path. Buddhahood, Krishnahood. So here again, to realize that truth which Sri Aurobindo and the mother have come to give it to us, it is the form of the mother, the form that she has taken, that becomes the doorway and the path. And Sri Aurobindo even, in fact, at one place says, because people had this idea, she's the world mother. So, anyways, we all are aware about the world mother. So how does it matter why only this mother? We can just concentrate in the heart on the world mother and she will lead us. And Sri Aurobindo reminds in one of his letters, be careful of an adverse, hostile Maya and an asuric illusion which tries to create a division between this mother and the world mother. The form and the name has been taken with a purpose, and we must understand it was not randomly that okay, let's have another form. There are already many forms to pass into the beyond. So this form has been taken with a certain purpose. Now the moment you talk about it that it's through the mother, this mother, you will hear, oh, it's a cult. Well, technically it is, but is it really something wrong? When we go back to the roots of the word cult, we find something very interesting. Cult comes from a Latin word which has wonderful meanings. It literally means to grow and expand, cultivate, culture, agriculture. It's never a negative word. It's something that there is a center around which things grow and expand. I've sometimes heard, I mean, frankly, people, somebody from Auroville, we don't follow any cult. So I tell them that, look, then in that case, Auroville itself is a cult. If you try to say that, because it's centered around mother. It doesn't matter whether, you have an image or you don't have an image. Can we imagine a place without the mother and we say, no, no, we are following each our own path? That's not what is meant. When it is said that there is freedom to experiment, when it's freedom to weigh, it means this freedom is granted with this very clear understanding that she is standing behind. There's a very interesting little story. Somebody went to Sri Raman Ashram and asked him that, in Sri Aurobindo Ashram, we have so much freedom which is given. Boys and girls meet freely, for instance. Isn't it something like fire and ghee? What is it? Butter. Ghee is an accepted term. So he gave a very interesting answer, an answer which many of us would not give, but this man in Raman Ashram said. He was told, nowhere else we see it, but in Sri Aurobindo Ashram we see this kind of freedom. He said, yes, they can do it because they are divine beings. So when it is said you have freedom, it means that the divine stands behind, she stands behind, she knows how far you can go, when to bring back, how to bring back. All this is like a controlled experiment. It's happening within her consciousness. There is no such freedom which is cutting yourself off from the Lord and saying, I'm going berserk in my own way. That won't happen. But when you keep her in the center, then the freedom has a meaning because she knows, that famous thing about Sri Aurobindo and Amrita, that Amrita started going in the mornings, started liking a girl, and Sri Aurobindo would sit at 2 o'clock, and sometimes there would be these seances, automatic writings, and he had a time fixed at 4 o'clock. And Sri Aurobindo at one point of time asked him that, Amrita, I think it's time for you to. So he took it as a sanction, and the sanction meant as far as it could go. He fixed up his marriage and everything, and comes and tells Sri Aurobindo. So Sri Aurobindo says, what nonsense. When he said, I want to get married to this girl. What nonsense. Sir, then why did you allow me to go so far? Sri Aurobindo's answer, to see how far you can go. Let's not forget that all this is happening with Sri Aurobindo at the center. He goes back and refers it to Sri Aurobindo. So the master is not just a representative image, but he is a reality, a power, a presence. And the form becomes so much more. It's not just a convenience, but that form of the divine has a great meaning. When the formless assumes a human form, it's not any other form. And that's why the mother went, and with Sri Aurobindo and the mother equally, when Sri Aurobindo's body was being interred in the Samadhi, and that message was given that they had written a message. Nice, very intelligent, intellectual disciples after all, no? So a message was given that Sri Aurobindo's mortal remains will be entered into the Samadhi. And thankfully, they again referred to the mother, and mother strikes it off. And right there is nothing mortal about Sri Aurobindo. Each cell of his body contains the immortal flame. It is that immortal fire, and he has, of course, written all this in Savitri. So when it comes to Sri Aurobindo and the mother, another letter where Sri Aurobindo is asked by Nirodha, sir, there are some people believe that you can, now that when the supramental force comes, we will not really need anything, but directly we can come in contact with the supramental force. And why can't we pull it just as you are pulling? Just imagine the grandiose, what shall I say, megalomania. The last man who tried was Ravana, and we know what happened to him. So Sri Aurobindo says, yes, technically you can do it, nothing prevents you from trying it, but all who have tried it have landed into a horrible cropper. Because what does really the mother do? We are not ready for receiving that which she has come to give. So she is the container. She holds all that tremendous force within her. And she gives us in dosage which is necessary. Sometimes we need homeopathic doses, small little dose, but does great effect. Sometimes we need allopathic doses. Sometimes we need injections. So she dispenses it in the amount that is necessary for us. And what if we are not ready even for that small little dose? Then she prepares us. It's not like anybody anywhere can now, come in contact with the supramental force. Now that it is there, it's no more needed, because these are things which come into, uh, you know, human thought. Then there is another very interesting idea that since the divine is within, many of these things which are religious practices. Now, religion has to do with outward rituals, practices, beliefs that we hold. So, I remember one little anecdote of Chote Narayan Sharma. Some of you may have heard about him. So, Chote Narayan Sharma, one day, he had gone to some place in Riva. So, Riva may, whose name I am going, but I will not take the name. So, and I met such people. Oh, we have never been to Pondicherry. We don't need to go to Pondicherry. We don't need to even go to the Samadhi. It's all within. I'm opening to the force. It's coming and working. So Chutnarayanji gave a very interesting reply. He was literally a master in many, many, all possible spiritual literature that I know of. So he said, he was very straightforward, very frank. So he tells this gentleman, you think we are fools and idiots who are just rubbing our head on a slab of stone? Tomb. That's how it is described. The tomb of Sri Aurobindo. Yes, it's the tomb of Sri Aurobindo to the eyes that do not see. It's might as well one can describe one's mother as my father's wife. Technically, it is correct. Can you address it like that? There is something which comes from the heart. She may be my father's wife, but for me, she is my mom. And the word mother has many, many connotations than my father's wife. So this is how we have to understand that outer practices are not just a concession given to the human mind, that when we bow to the samadhi, it's like, we need some external figure to hold. Sri Aurobindo, in one of his beautiful passages in the Synthesis of Yoga, she says it's true that to begin with, certain idolatries are needed. And idols are not just outside, idols are in the mind. People, there is a whole religion which destroys idols, says Bhut Parasti and destroys it. Fools don't realize that idol is in the mind. When you describe God in a certain way, you are building an idol. Mind builds concepts and ideas. And through that, it builds an image. That image somebody paints or somebody puts it. So, idol is nothing else but it is a concretization of that which is inside. So, he says, yes, it is true. But then he goes on to say, even when you have discovered and realized the divine within, still, because your whole being wants to participate in the movement of yoga, therefore, it continues, but now with a new significance. Mother and Sri Aurobindo are within, even when one has realized the presence within. One knows that they are all the time with us. Does it mean that now I don't need to, that kindergarten stage that is over? Sri Aurobindo says, no, because your body wants to participate in that movement. If you read one of the mother's writings, very beautiful. She says, 3 types of surrender. And one of them, she says, let thy will be done. She says they are accompanied with 3 movements, corresponding physical movements. In the third one, she describes that laying down prostrate before the divine, opening everything from head to toe and saying, this is yours. Giving oneself entirely to the divine. Now, there is a physical movement which corresponds. This tendency to cut the physical world from the other world. This is what created the big gap. And today, if you find the definition of the word spiritual, it's very interesting. All that pertains to the spirit. But since spirit is beyond definition, so all that is non-material is spiritual. This is the way spirituality is defined. So anything which is material, anything which is physical or connected with the physical is regarded as non-spiritual. It was because of this that in the playground, when all this started, nice equipment and all, people wondered that whether the ashram is losing its way. When Mother and Sri Aurobindo are physically there, they were great people who thought that, why it is done. Even there was a nice film song which was once played and people complained to the mother. Today a film song was played in the playground during meditation. And the mother said, which song? It was a French song when the soldiers are going for the war. And she said, but this is such a nice song. What's your problem? So it's spiritual and religious. Things don't become spiritual and religious by the outer act. This is the limitation of the human mind. They become spiritual or religious based on the consciousness we put in the act. This is the fundamental thing. Offering a flower could be a religious thing, could be a mechanical thing, not even a religious thing, and could be a deeply spiritual thing. When people would come and give, you see, this because of this division, so many things have happened which, I don't know whether people remember it or not. Earlier, we would come and bring, there was a whole section where you could offer flowers. Okay, the logic was it becomes very crowded, but people love to give flower, and if there is a nice place where they could be kept, because it's your offering to Sri Aurobindo and the mother. People would go to the mother, carry flowers, and what was the action of these flowers? There is this sadhika who was carrying a flower and it was little drooping. So what to do? Anyways, it was her birthday. She took it to the mother and said, Mother, I'm sorry, but this is the only one which I could get. Mother took it in her hands and smiled, and she just gently caressed the flower. The flower began to bloom. Meaning thereby, you bring your consciousness and give it to me, and it's my work to change it. And the same applies to everything. So when one does or gives something to the divine, in whatever measure one gives it, and it's a physical act, because tomorrow even offering money can be a physical act. It's not the physical act, it's the consciousness which is behind. One may give a lot of things, but with the idea that I must get things in return, whereas one can give even the smallest thing. Look at how the Bhagavad Gita describes it so beautifully. Patram, pushpam, phalam, toyam, even the smallest of small things, even a blade of grass, a leaf, a stone, whatever people offer to me, devotees offer to me with love, I receive it. And this, in the measure of what we have given, we become receptive to the touch of the divine. So religion is not about just outer act. It is about the consciousness that we put into it. Equally, one could, the best is to give oneself. I know a sadhika who wanted to offer some money, and she would calculated this much money to be given, and she went to Sri Aurobindo's room, and suddenly she started looking for money, but she couldn't find it. So she was getting very tense, and she was a clairvoyant lady. So suddenly she hears a voice, you can give your money anywhere. Here you give yourself. And she herself told me, here you give yourself. Now this was a amazing, life-changing experience for her. Here you give yourself. Money you can give anywhere. You can put in the hundi, you can put here, there, anywhere. So this is the second aspect we realize, that one is that when we do physical acts and gestures, they are a way that they represent something of the divine to us, like in Indian thought, namaste. They are not meaningless things. So we don't say just hi, bye. We do a namaste, and we all know the meaning, and we don't want to get into that. Even this gesture of, bowing down completely. So it's like, I give myself completely to you in utter humility. And as the mother has said, the power of the Guru flows through the feet. This today's a special day, and mother describes that experience. She says, I didn't know what it implies. I had heard in India that people bow down to the feet of God or the Guru, but I didn't really know, because she came from a background where this was just not done. She said, the moment I bowed down to Sri Aurobindo, I realized the great truth of it. That's how she said, the power of the master flows through the feet. You see those lines in Savitri, and where she presses her feet, course from the mother, and where she presses her feet, course miraculous streams of an entrancing Ananda. And of course in Savitri, descend, O happiness, with thy moon gold feet. And further, all nature dumbly calls to her alone, to heal with her feet the aching throb of life. So in the entire human body, it's a representation of a great truth. So this is the one part. Second, the body wants to participate in the movement. Why should it be left aloof that inwardly I am offering? Poor body will say, sir, I am also here. Please don't neglect me. I also want to participate. So mind will say, no, 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 if I bow down at the samadhi, you are making a cult. Should we listen to the mind, or should we listen to the urge of the soul? Should we also give importance to the body which wants to bow down and complete the movement? So, this physical acts and gestures are also meant to complete something which has already been realized. Look at the relation of mother and Sri Aurobindo. Had not she realized everything? She was all the time one with the Lord. She said it was very easy for us to come out of the body and merge completely. When she was speaking about consciousness of immortality, she said this, we both had realized it long back. But look at this when she would go to Sri Aurobindo. It's one of the most beautiful chapters and very liberating. When people would give her flowers and all, she will come. 12 years with Sri Aurobindo, the Leela of the Lord. Place it at Sri Aurobindo's feet or give it to him. He would receive it. Why was he receiving it? He was not saying "Ki all this not needed. All God is all within." It's an integral movement of union with the divine. The body must participate. There are such instances where on somebody who would pick up a particular mala made from tulsi beads at Dwarka on Krishna Janmashtami, come and give it to Sri Aurobindo on 15th August. Darshan day, Sri Aurobindo would wear it and then hang it. There is a whole place you will see in near Sri Aurobindo's room, near mother's room actually, that passage, where there are actually little hooks to hang those things which were given to Sri Aurobindo. So all these physical gestures, they may seem insignificant and trivial, but they are part of that participatory process. It's a transaction with the divine, and the body must participate in that movement. Then only the body receives. For a complete Advaitic realization, it's not needed. This understood, because you just want to find a door and enter into the infinite. But to limit it only to that is not to do justice to the. That's the mistake that was done. Participation of the entire being, entire body. So that much for religion. Where does religion become bad or a problem? Where does a cult become a difficulty and a problem? It becomes a difficulty and the problem when one says, mine is the only one. My guru is the only guru. My guru is the bestest best. Everybody should get converted to my, whoever is the original. The strange part is religions which believed in an impersonal God are most vociferous about conversion. Why? Strange, because if God is impersonal, why do you want to really convert anyone? But most vociferous about conversion. Of course, it was done for political reasons. There is no religion behind, there is no religious truth behind conversion. It's just to take comfort in numbers and then therefore push forward a political regime, and there is nothing religious about conversion. Conversion always is a conversion of the soul within, and that takes place when the time has come. And that conversion means that automatically from within a cry comes that here is the one whom I have sought through the ages. Why only one life? It's a psychic shock. Beautifully this message was circulating today. The mother reveals how she realized that he is the one. She says that in a vision she used to see one whom she used to say Krishna. And then suddenly when she saw the two, the inner and the outer met, he is the one. He whom we saw yesterday, he is here upon earth. And then there is a tremendous shock within. And when the two become one, you realize that's conversion. It's a true conversion. It's something automatic. One doesn't have to do it. And it cannot be done by any artificial means. So religion becomes a problem when we try to convert to ideologies. Why it is a problem when we try to convert? Because then we are taking away the fundamental right of a human being. This is where the freedom must be brought in. All the liberal thought must speak against it, because it means you have taken away from somebody the right. You see, when a child is born, you have converted him right then and there. You should allow that freedom to explore and discover and find in his own way. But the moment we convert somebody, either by force or by lure, we have taken away the fundamental right. The most fundamental right is the spiritual right to grow into the spirit by the path you want to grow. And it should never be taken away because the most sacred of all. That's what is there in the story of Esau and Jacob, where, she says he gave away his birthright for a for a pot of porridge. And the mother recounts this story. She says, though it looks like a story, but it's very true. It's literally about, you can apply it in many places, but on one place, it does refer. So, what is conversion? Your birthright to choose your path, spiritual path. That's your birthright. But when you give it for a pot of porridge, what is porridge? Riches, material riches, money, benefits, getting a job in Dubai or wherever. So you have actually sold your birthright, and there can be nothing more asuric and damaging than this. So, in that sense, when we try to do that, then actually we are not even being religious, we are just being political and ideological. Similarly, there are certain ideologies which are more damaging than religion. Anything which says this is the only way, narrow, dogmatic. What is fundamentalism and fanaticism is born from this idea that my God and no other. That is dangerous. That should never creep into thought. Not only that, Mother goes on to say about Mother and Sri Aurobindo, she says, for your mind, what you have said is the best way for you that you have spoken about Sri Aurobindo. But there would be others who could speak in other ways or write in other ways. And one should allow that wideness. Sri Aurobindo is infinite. How beautifully she says, who can understand Sri Aurobindo? He is as vast as the universe and his teaching is infinite. When I had read first time, I said, he is as vast as the universe. I always thought he is infinite. And his teaching is infinite. Normally teaching seems to be, lesser. Then I understood that she's speaking of the form of Sri Aurobindo is as vast as the universe. Form itself is, there was a whole experience which made me realize that he is a Vishwarupa. And he has written about it in collected poems where we see, I have wrapped the wide world in my wider self, London and Tokyo and Paris, my spirit seeing are. So that is the cosmic form of Sri Aurobindo. So he is as vast as the universe. Here she is referring not to Sri Aurobindo in his essential self, but in his just the form. He whom we call as the material envelope of our master is itself cosmic consciousness, form. But teaching is infinite, meaning thereby there are several layers. And one can start from the most outer meaning of the words and go deeper and deeper and deeper till probably one word is enough. You see what happened to Shri Krishna, the same words which we have heard from childhood in our bhajans. Shri Krishna, when he went to Ghor Rishi, he just told him 3 words and suddenly a veil was rent. Akshitam, Achyutam. And for him it carried a very different meaning. We hear those words, they don't carry the meaning. That's where the power of the master comes in. What is the power of the master? When he puts that sense in the word, which is very different. So, the difference between a religious teaching and a spiritual teaching is this. Spiritual teaching is packed with the contents of consciousness. When Mother was asked, Mother, if we really look at Mother's writings, they appear so simple. She's telling a child. And they were part of the classes for children. And then she's asked that, Mother, but what is it that you put there that makes it so very different, special, whole 5-6 lines question? Mother's answer is only one word. What I put into these words, she says consciousness. That's it. So when we read these words, it's not as a concession. Again, all religions will have a book. What is this book meant for? Book is not meant only for, every day I've done a part. This tendency is there. We have grown up in that cult, we'll do the part. Okay, at one level it is important. And you see how in Indian thought it was all woven. Sri Aurobindo describes it that, for instance, why festivals came. At one level it is true that we like festivals. But because human consciousness has many dimensions, many aspects. We are not just the soul. For the soul, nothing is really needed. Once it recognizes the divine, it gives itself. And once it has given, there is no way you can reverse that giving. That moment is, everything is done. Its destiny is sealed. But there is the mind. So there is something for the thought. So you have philosophical systems and all that. But is this enough? Mind is satisfied, but the heart is very dry. Heart also wants to participate. So you have streams of bhakti, various ways of expressions of bhakti, hymns of adoration, prayers, hymns. They are not intellectual words, but they are meant for the participation of the heart into the joy of the divine. Often people ask, once in um, Udaipur, there is a famous temple where Mirabai had gone and fused with Shri Krishna. And someone asked, why does God want to us to do his bhakti? I said, sir, God is, he doesn't want us to do his bhakti. It's a special grace given to us so that we can open to his love. Otherwise, this love force will be here, there, everywhere, except the place where it should turn. So, if you don't do bhakti, it doesn't matter to him, but it matters to us. And what is bhakti? It's a spilling over from within. So much that he has filled us with. So, a little bit spills and goes to God. So, this is the what is the essence of bhakti? Because the heart participates. What about the will and the life energy? Should they participate or not, or just only the mind? All it has read all the books on Advaita. You see, some of the nice, it's interesting to watch sometimes, good to observe. People so much in Advaita, and then they will come and they will sit, and all it comes down to the most ordinary way of life and work. So the life energy must participate, the will must participate. So we have works for the divine. Is this religion? Is this spiritual? Traditional understanding? You won't find it. There is no way you can define it. But works and offering our works to the divine is so important. When somebody asks Sri Aurobindo, I want to come to the ashram so that mother can give me a mantra. Sri Aurobindo's letter, mother doesn't give mantra, she gives work. Mantra will spring from within. Because our life energies are participating in the process. And then comes the physical body, which must also be engaged through various forms of service of the divine. So, this is the whole package. And then, yes, because man is also a collective unit, we are not living alone. So, there are collective things which are always there in Indian thought, and everywhere it is there. Congregations, meetings, because it's like a yagna where everybody comes and there is a, mixing of the inner flames and a growth of the flame through this mixing. So, there is a truth behind all these things. And one has to get back to those truths. Instead of creating a trenchant divisions that this is religion, this is spiritual. And then, what about sect? Is it a sect? Sect literally means that, it comes from to cut. So you have dissect. Dissect we used to do as medical students. Cut. So what is section? It literally means a part of a greater whole. So sect literally always invariably refers to something which is a larger body out of which something has emerged. So is Sri Aurobindo's yoga a sect? Well, if we look at it, it comes on the wider basis of Sanatan Dharma. So one could call it a sect. But Sanatan Dharma itself is so vast and infinite that you can't limit it. It's like you can say sects, like in Christianity you have Catholics and Protestants. So they are sects. You have one Buddhism, you have Mahayana, Hinayan, Theravada Buddhism. All these are sects of Buddhism. In Islam you have Shia, Sunni, and God knows what else. So it is in that sense a sect. But sect of what? Sect of something infinite. How do you section the infinite? That's the beauty of Sanatana Dharma, that it allowed not only approach, but each approach became unique as if it existed independently. Sikhism, all the truths are of Sanatana Dharma, but it exists in its own right as something tremendous and great, The teachings, if you see, are same as Sanatana Dharma, but it exists in its own right. So in a certain sense, yes, it comes under the larger understanding of, the background. As Sri Aurobindo says, Sri Aurobindo's teachings starts from the ancient teaching of the Vedanta that there is one reality. But does it stop there? No, it is all inclusive. It takes every possible. You will find this yoga, that yoga, tantra, everything in Sri Aurobindo's teaching. And what is most beautiful, it integrates the most ordinary life and material existence in that vast canvas. So it's a sect which takes its tree to the highest heights that it can. So if I have to use an image, I would say sects are like branches coming out of the main trunk. And most of the branches are at the similar level, a little high or lower. But this has taken from the root something which is very, very high up. It just indicated in the Vedic teachings that earth and heaven should become equal and one. But Sri Aurobindo actually draws from there and takes it to those heights where they actually become equal and one. So, in that sense, yes. But in the end, what do we really want? So that's the problem with the mind. Mind is very happy defining things and giving very good scholarly lectures. But the difference is that in India, you had not just philosophy and belief system. Belief systems are where you believe in certain things. That's what most religions have become. In Hindi, there is a word manna. आप ये मानते हो? Do you believe in it? Next step is janna. Do you know it? There is a difference between believing and knowing. I believe there is a soul within. But do I know it? If I know it, the language will change. The famous story of Swami Ramtirth, where he gave a lecture, and somebody asked, "So, sir, you believe that there is a soul within?" He said, "No." "Sir, but you were talking about the soul." "I didn't say there is a soul within the body. I said the body is within the soul." Now that's experience. Body is within the soul. As Swami Vivekananda says, "I have spat out the body." He doesn't say the soul left the body. He says, "I have spat out the body." Literally an Upanishadic expression. So, between believing and knowing, the gulf is bridged by yoga. That's where the ground of experience comes in, which goes beyond all sect, cult, religion, and the way we define spirituality. In fact, in a certain sense, spirituality begins with yoga. And beyond jhana is banana, to become. There is a very beautiful, in the Life Divine, there is a whole chapter, that lines of spiritual evolution, where Sri Aurobindo says there are 4 doors through which spiritual evolution has taken place: occultism, religion, spiritual experience and realizations, and philosophy. Philosophy comes first. Last is spiritual experiences and realizations. All these have prepared the race for a grand evolution. Means spiritual experience and realization are also not the last word. So it's not just about spirituality, religion, sect, cult, but something still greater, which is not manifested. And what name can we give to it? Supramental, it's a way of saying. Supramental yoga, integral yoga, these are terms we use, but it's something way beyond. It is to become the divine in every little cell, every atom of our existence. Why? Because the fundamental truth is that the divine is within each and every aspect. Yat kincha jagatyam jagat. That's what it means. That everything should become the divine because divine is hidden inside it. It's not just about realizing the divine, but becoming the divine in every detail of creation. I am tempted to quote a little ghazal, not a ghazal, but a song, mystic song, and how it puts it. He says, "What are the choices before human beings?" He says, "जी चाहे तो शीशा बन जा, जी चाहे पैमाना." I'll translate in English. शीशा, पैमाना क्या बनना? मैं बन जा, मैं खाना बन जा. Shisha is the goblet in which wine is kept. So he says you can become an ordinary glass or you can become a goblet which holds the wine. 2 options. But why do you want to become the glass or a goblet? Why not become the wine itself? Why only wine? Why not become the storehouse of wine of Ananda? Shisha, मैं खाना क्या बनना? मैं बन जा, मैं खाना बन जा. Then he says, why you want to become something like a storehouse of wine? मैं बनकर, मैं खाना बनकर, उससे अच्छा है हस्ती से बेगाना बन जाए. You forget yourself so completely and be so much one with the Lord that there is nothing which is there except the Lord. To live in that consciousness. And he says that when you do that, people will call you divana. They will think you are mad. But you won't be affected because as far as you are concerned, there is no more any you. Then it goes very beautiful lines after that. He says, what all you can become? He says, रूह के आंख की ठंडक बन जा, खा के दरे जानाना बन जा, खा के दरे जानाना बनकर नूर की आंख का सुरमा बन जा. He says, you become the dust of the Lord's feet. And that dust can become the, surma. I don't know, people have used surma or not. Surma in old time, like kajal, but it's something still special. Ladies in India used to use to keep the eyes healthy. And of course, kajal looks beautiful, so it was like that. So that dust which is below the Lord's feet is picked up by the Lord and he uses it as kajal. You see why this analogy? Kajal is something usually we associate, black color, dark as something negative. But what does the Lord do? You may be kajal, things which are burnt away. That's how kajal is made. But he will pick it up and put it in his eyes, and it'll become his beauty. There is nothing which can enhance his beauty, but still, that's his way of saying. And then he says at the end that you have to burn the ego. Why you want to burn it here and there? Raise so much fire within yourself that you burn yourself within it. Now, this is really entering into territory which none of these terms define. So, yoga is what? Yoga is literally the bridge between the human consciousness and the divine. Otherwise, these things remain wonderful terms. So, people often discuss about these terms. Is it religion? Is it spirituality? What matters in the end, as Sri Ramakrishna says, and there is very beautiful, Sri Ramakrishna put it like that why you want to discuss about the pot, go and eat the honey. Sri Aurobindo also says something very similar in one of his aphorisms. He says religious disputes are like this. They are discussing about what is there inside the pot. For us, we go and drink, eat what is there inside the pot. What is inside the pot is honey. Any religion. And the mother says it's not because of religion, it's irrespective of religion. There are people who have a seeking. That's where spiritual life begins, with the seeking. And they have a seeking. Any religion could become for them a means to go further. It doesn't matter. Because they were seeking. But she says these are a handful of people, and she says very clearly, regardless of the religion. Because they were seeking. But there are some who are satisfied with fixed formulas, fixed belief systems, and they are fine. We should not disturb anybody who is not ready for the greater adventure. So Indian thought never rejected religion versus spirituality. It accepted it. There is a stage when we need to just have certain beliefs, certain frameworks to lead life. Perfectly fine. One is not ready for the deeper plunge. If you don't want to scale the Himalayas, at least it's good to know there is Himalayas. There is something so beautiful, magnificent. And next stage is you see the pictures. So when you see the picture, oh, this is wonderful. Maybe one day, I know people who say, one day we want to go to Mansarovar. So, but third stage is, you want to go, but it's a difficult journey. Then they will meet people who have returned from Mansarovar. It's beautiful, it's beautiful. But we are afraid. No, don't worry, it's so beautiful. Shiva will protect you. Now that is very... people want some health camps all around which will protect you. Shiva will protect you is too vague and a term. Then one day we take the pilgrim staff of faith and the torch of aspiration and we set going. And we said, come what may, we want to have the darshan of Mansarovar. These are the stages of human development. When we don't know the Himalayas, we have heard from someone. Himalayas represent a, like a coffee table, people discuss about God, yoga, spirituality. It's like that, a kind of philosophy people indulge in. It's not even philosophy really speaking, because philosophy is really an effort of the mind to try to understand the ineffable. But it's okay, that stage of development. Next, people are become a little curious. They want to know some representation, some image, something, some book on the Himalayas. Then they get interested. Then they meet the pilgrims who have come. They themselves have not undertaken the journey. So you have religions where you have masters and others. You meet them. Sir, what is there? Oh, it is wonderful. Sir, please describe. Now when you describe, you have finished it very often. You have never seen a swan. If somebody who has seen a swan tries to describe it to someone who has never seen a swan, what will he say? It's a white bird. Sir, is it albatross? No, little less than that. Sir, is it what is kingfisher? Like that, you will start representing in the mind, because one is never really seen. Yet, when we represent it to the mind, it becomes a starting ground. Then the next is that we take the pilgrim staff and walk the path. That is yoga. So we have this entire continuum of the journey, starting from belief, faith, aspiration, actually undertaking the journey. And then we see that all these terms created by mind to antagonize and divide are really steps of the great ascent. Start from any which where, but ultimately one should be clear where one wants to go. That's the only thing needed. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, it's a complete unity, not just of body and mind, but of spirit and matter. So it is a tremendous work. And yes, the mother is at the center of it, not just the world mother. World mother protects us, does everything, she provides to everyone. But for the sake of the supramental transformation, she has taken this form. There is a reason why she took this form. Otherwise, she would have just done it everywhere. So, this form of the Divine Mother becomes for us the gate towards the great consummation promised by Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. If it is called a sect, so be it. If it's called a cult, so be it. The seeker of the God doesn't get into all these disputes. He doesn't care about what people call him or don't call him. He knows the path and goes straight to the path, because that's what is most concerned with. So instead of getting lost in semantics, scholarly debates and discussions, what should matter for us is just to undertake the journey and then realize for ourselves. And then we'll see that these are not terms which oppose each other, but are part of a grand synthesis, steps through which the divine is leading us toward the great consummation, divine consummation in humanity. Namaste. So we will, of course, I'm sure it must have been taken up at some point, but it's a very valid question. So mind creates opposites like seeming, form and the formless, knowledge and ignorance. These are the ways by which mind creates oppositions and opposites. But to the divine, they are both terms of the one. And another place in Savitri, this is beautifully answered. Several places. One of the places is, in knowledge and ignorance they have spoken and met. So even God uses our ignorance, to put it in very simple terms, for building his mansion of knowledge. So we create a division between knowledge and ignorance. It's necessary as we move from one step to another. But who was there on the step when we were in ignorance? The same world mother encircling us. She became this, Avidyamai to lead us, and she becomes Vidyamai and reveals herself in a state of oneness. So basically, it's revealing to us that this antagonism created by the human mind, let's say between form and formless. So Sri Aurobindo so beautifully puts it, O worshipper of the formless infinite, reject not form. What dwells in form is he. And this is straight reminds me of number of lines from the Isha Upanishad. Vidya avindyanch yastadveda bhyamsa. There is a reason why forms have been built, and with the forms, the ignorance, because it's a limitation. So that's what it is being conveyed, that he is working because death creates an opposition. The biggest falsehood in the world is to create an unbridgeable gulf between matter and spirit. That's how the mother puts it. In fact, she uses the word, this is the greatest insincerity, to regard spirit and matter as two opposites and different. And who has built the gulf? Death. So that's what she will answer. You are the one who has created the gulf. From the divine point of view, there is no gulf. It's all one. He is there in the Upanishads, there is a very nice Dash Mahavidya, where the Divine Mother on 10 planes she incarnates. On the highest, she is Tripur Sundari, the most beautiful of all the three worlds, at the apex of the world. But right down below, she becomes Dhumavati, covered with smoke. And so same mother, at the height she revealed like that, or in another parable, she is Gauri, the effulgent fair one. She becomes Kali, taking all the aspects of what we normally call as asuric, destruction, violence, storm, turbulence, all that she takes upon herself. Because she has to work in the depths. Now there too it is the same Divine Mother. So essentially, it's about the unity of creation where the Divine Mother is working at all the steps. And depending on our state of readiness, she reveals ourselves to Him. There is nothing else but God. To put it in very simple terms, there is a place in Savitri where, no, there is in Thoughts and Aphorism, where Sri Aurobindo says, which is relevant in contextual in today's times. When things are happening, wars are going on, fights are going on. Sri Aurobindo says, wherefore God hammers this world so fiercely, beats it as if mercilessly. And then he says, because the material is still crude. Change the material and he too will use gentler ways. So if the material is hard, it needs the titanic labor. If the material becomes soft and pliable, then he will also take it in the hands and nicely make it. So this is what is being revealed in this passage, because death creates the opposition, perpetual opposition. I'll just read a few lines and then, because I'm sure we have the enormous circle of a wonder works, immortality assured itself by death. This is right there in the Ishopanishad, Avidyancha mityum titva, immortality. The Eternal's face was seen through drifts of time. Look at the opposition of time and eternity. His knowledge he disguised as ignorance. He disguised. His good he sowed in evil's monstrous bed. There is a letter of Sri Aurobindo to Mrilani Devi when, one of her brothers died, third one or something. He says, well, the ways of God that He brings good out of evil. Very often when we look back at our lives, we understand that the most moments of grace were not when things were easy, but those when we had the most challenging times. That was the moment when we took a leap. The grace was active, super active that time. So here it's about that. Made error a door by which truth could enter in. His plant of bliss watered with sorrow's tears. See, if the hearts of men were not forced to want and weep, we would have lain content at ease and never learned to exceed our animal start. So, the heart of man is forced to. 1,000 aspects point back to the one, a dual nature covered the unique. In this meeting of the Eternal's mingling masks, this tangled dance of passionate contraries, locking like lovers in a forbidden embrace, good and evil, how can they embrace each other? And yet that is the truth of life, because it is through that evolution happens. Two currents, opposites, needed for the world play for evolution. In the Vedas it is described as to light up the fire, you pick up wood. One wood you keep below. It describes graphically, one above, and then you rub them, and then the fire comes out. So both are needed for our evolution. When they are no more needed, it will vanish. When Mother was asked, when will the adverse forces go? She gave a very small answer. When man will no more need them for evolution. It's to live in that unity, all-embracing unity of God. Human mind parts them and therefore provides for himself a kind of strange situation where he starts seeking good and starts keeping away evil. The problem with that kind of duality is, Sri Aurobindo says, if you want to create a utopia, distrust all utopias which promise you a beautiful future while keeping the roots of sin and evil lurking. The roots are in the ego and which create dualities in desires. I want this and I don't like that. This creates good and evil. When things happen which I like, then I call them good or pleasant or happiness. When they don't happen according to my likes and wishes, then I call them. It's a purely personal, egoistic standpoint. But that's not how God operates. He can become Krishna, who is regarded as the most sweetest, cutest little baby. He takes the form of death, time the destroyer. Even Arjuna is appalled. You are not the friend I know. Come back to your little. Don't be so terrible. So we regard these things as opposites, the human mind. But essentially there is nothing else but a single unity of God. That's what these lines. Because death creates that division. And death, speaking through the human mind, is that. But it doesn't mean again that I can do anything with impunity. It's not implied. what is important is to understand that how this play works. He uses everything for the purposes for which creation has been meant, and that is to become one with the creator. Okay, so we'll take it up one day and I'll send you the clipping. Okay, thank you.